Hello everyone and welcome to the Orchard Industry Museum here at the Laurel Packing House. My name is Allison and today we get to talk about the trees we eat. So we'll learn a little bit about the orcharding history here in the Okanagan, and we'll also learn how tiny little seeds like this turn into huge trees like that. But before we jump into that, I do want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded land of the Syilx people. And since time immemorial, the Syilx people have been tending to native plants here on the land and making sure that they are healthy and getting everything that they need to grow and thrive and produce amazing, delicious fruit. So things like chokecherry and Saskatoon berry and strawberry, just to name a few. Now you might be surprised to know that apples actually are not native to the Okanagan. So those came here with Europeans. Now, the first apple orchard got started with a man named Father Pandozzi. He arrived in the late 1850s, early 1860s, and Father Pandozzi and the brothers that he was with, they set up a really small apple orchard. Now, it was really tiny. It was not meant to make a profit. It was just meant to help keep them alive. But over the years, as more and more Europeans started to move to the valley, they saw how beautiful it was here, and they saw the possibility for growing lots of different kinds of fruit. Now, the orchards back then looked a little different than the orchards now. So we're gonna look at this picture right behind me here to compare some of those differences. So there's three things in this photograph that really stand out as being different. So one of them is the horses. So in the past, people would use horses and wagons to help manage their orchards, whereas today people mostly use machines. You'll also notice that their clothes are a little bit different, so that has changed over time. But something else that might be surprising is the size of the trees. Now, orchards in the past, they would have had really large trees on land, and they would have been spaced out quite a bit. But over time, we've learned how to change those trees, and we've learned how to make them smaller. So on that same plot of land, you can have more trees spaced closer together, and they'll grow more fruit. Now, there's lots of different kinds of fruit that can grow here in the Okanagan now, and I've got a few samples of different ones that you might see around your neighborhood or maybe even in your own backyard. So our very first one is pear. Those. Okay. And we also have plums. We have cherries. Apricot, peaches, and of course, apples. Now, before we continue on with our story, I have 4 fabulously fruity facts for you. So it takes apple trees about 4 to 5 years from the time that they are planted to the time that they are mature enough to produce fruit. So it takes a lot of patience. The world's heaviest pear was grown in Japan. It weighed 6.5 pounds. That's the same as a brick. Cherries, peaches, plums, nectarines, apples, and strawberries, those are all members of the rose family, Rosaceae. And our last one, scientists at the Pacific Agri-Food Research Center in Summerland know a lot about fruit. And in the 1980s, they started a new experiment that ended up creating 3 different kinds of apples that we can find in our grocery stores today. So we have Salish, Nicola, and Aurora Golden Gala. Now, by the early 1900s, there were lots of orchards popping up all over the valley, but it's not quite as simple as just throwing some seeds down on the dirt and letting nature take its course. Anything that's not native to the Okanagan, that's not used to the precipitation that we get and the hot temperatures, they need lots of help from people. But let's think about those 3 things that all plants need to survive. So we know that plants need sun, soil, and water. So we have a lot of sunshine here in the Okanagan. That's not a problem. We've got lots of soil as well. And we have a huge lake, so we've got lots of water, right? Well, it's not quite as simple as that. See, most of the water that we use to irrigate and water crops actually comes from the mountains. And early Europeans found a pretty neat way to access that water. So I have some archival photos here to show you. So this is an irrigation flume crossing Gallagher's Canyon. It's basically just a giant water slide, but that would have taken a very long time to build. And of course, you need a way for that to make it to people's orchards. So there you can see we have a little trough in the corner, and there's lots of little spouts for the water to come out and go into ditches that people have dug. So this is one way to get a lot of water to your crops, but there's also a lot of evaporation that happens when you do that, where basically the water just disappears and goes back into the air. So today we do things a little bit differently. We use different kinds of sprinklers, and we also do something called drip irrigation, which is tiny little sprinklers that are put at the base of plants by their roots. And it either has a little spray or it just slowly drips water right onto the roots where it's needed, so that less water is lost. So now your plant has everything that it needs to grow, but where does that fruit come from? Well, I've got a few different pictures here to show you how fruit actually grows on a tree. So our very first one is with a dormant bud. So this would have been over the winter time when it's really cold. It's basically just having a nice long nap. But once the spring comes, you can see that it's starting to open up a little bit. So we've got a little bit of green poking through. And as it gets warmer and warmer with the springtime, that bud starts to open up even more. And we've also got some leaves on here now. And then eventually that bud turns into a nice, wonderful flower. And at this point, we need some help from our friends, the bees, to come and pollinate it. Because when they spread pollen, which is yellow dust on the inside of the flowers, when they spread it from flower to flower, that helps the flower eventually turn into a fruit. Because once the flower has lost its petals and looks something like this, you can see that there is sort of thicker spots right at the base of the flower, and that's where the fruit is actually going to come from. You can get a really good sense of it with this next picture, where it's much, much bigger, and you can still see the remnants of that flower, but our fruit is absolutely starting to grow. And then, after a little more time growing, we have our finished product. We have our fruit. Now, different fruits take different amounts of time to go through all of those stages. So something like cherries go through it really fast. That's why they are the first ones to come out in the spring. But other ones like apples take a little bit longer, and that's why we can't harvest them until the fall. And now that you've got your fully grown fruit, there's something that you can do to take your snack game to the next level. So you can engage all 5 of your senses. So you can do sight. So what does it look like? How big is it? What color is it? You can also do smell. Is it really fragrant, or is it a little more understated? You can also do touch. So how does it feel? Is it really smooth? Is it kind of fuzzy? You can also do taste. So is it really sour or really sweet, or a mixture of both? And the last one is sound. So when you take a bite, is it really crunchy and satisfying, or is it nice and soft? And does it not make any sound as it just melts in your mouth? So those are a few different things that you can do to help really enjoy your next piece of fruit. Now, I thought it would be fun to finish up with a game that I like to call Apple or Bond. So I'm going to read off a few different names, and you need to think if it's the name of a type of apple or if it's the name of a character from a James Bond movie. So we'll go with Honeycrisp. This one is definitely an apple, and as the name suggests, it's really sweet and really nice and crispy. We have, Rosa Klebb. Rosa Klebb. This one is a Bond character. We also have Gala. So this one is another type of apple. This one is actually my favorite kind of apple. They are delicious. We have Kissy Suzuki. Ooh. Could be an apple, but it's a Bond character. And Northern Spy. Now there's lots of spies in James Bond movies, but this one is actually a type of apple. It can grow here in the Okanagan, but it's not quite as popular. Ooh, Kronstein. That's another one that could go either way. But this is another Bond character. And that is all of them. So thank you for coming to the Orchard Industry Museum here at the Laurel Packing House to learn a little bit about the trees that we eat. Bye.